I had this thought yesterday as I was walking around the city of Midland, AirPods in, listening to some podcast, walking around. Some crazy thoughts tend to enter your mind. And one of the thoughts that entered my mind was, wait. The Lions have never had a contract holdout situation. Not once. And part of me is starting to worry that they might be running into their first contract dispute with training camp starting this week. They've been able to avoid it here for the most part. Taylor Decker's gotten his contract. Aleem McNeil's gotten his contract. The three studs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, Jared Goff all got their contract. There was no hesitation. But with Alex Anzalone, he's kind of already made public comments about, I want a new contract. And I think I have made it clear on this show, I don't think he's getting one. Try to find the money for it. Right? Alex Anzalone, one of the more underpaid players, not only on the Lions, with a $6 million salary this season and last season, but really one of the more underrated players and underpaid players across the league. Let's say he wanted to be a top 10 paid linebacker in the league. Well, Dre Greenlaw just got paid $10 million a season, 10.5 to be exact, and he is the 11th highest paid linebacker in the NFL. Denver picked him up this offseason. So if Anzalone wants to be a top 10 paid linebacker, which I'm going to assume he does, it's going to cost upwards of $10, $11 million per season. He's earned that. But here's the problem. Want to hear something really scary? Start thinking about next year's offseason. Because you have Sam LaPorta, who's most likely set to become one of the three highest paid tight ends in the NFL. $20 million a season. That's what the projection should look like. You have Brian Branch, who's looking to become one of the three highest paid safeties in the NFL. Kirby Joseph, already number one, by the way. And I think consensus is Brian Branch is just a better player than Kirby Joseph, even though Kirby Joseph ends up with all the interceptions. I think, without doubt, I would take Brian Branch over Kirby Joseph. I think the consensus across the league would also be that. So you have Brian Branch, who's set to probably become a top three highest paid player. This is all next offseason, by the way. You also have Jamison Williams, who, man, that's an entire different conversation that we can get into, whether or not he's going to get a contract extension. But let's just, for the sake of it, throw some numbers out there. Diggs, Stephon, is making $21 million per season, and he's the 20th highest paid wide receiver in the NFL. I'd take Jamison Williams over Stephon Diggs right now. Brandon Ayuk's the 8th highest paid receiver in the NFL. He's making $30 million a season. Jalen Waddle, the 10th highest paid receiver in the NFL, $28 million a season. So, ballpark estimate, very wide range. Let's say Jamo's making somewhere between $20 to $30 million if he hits the open market. Brian Branch, LaPorta, Jamison Williams, all set to likely become $20 million per year players next offseason. Lot of checks that they have to hand out. You know who we haven't mentioned, who could get a contract extension tomorrow, is Aiden Hutchinson, also set to be a $20 million per year player. The Lions are suddenly at the, I want to be careful with how I word this because I don't believe it's, hey, this year or bust, Super Bowl or bust, but there is an element to that this year. Let's just be honest with ourselves. I think the Lions are a well-run organization to the point where they are just going to find sustained success. They draft well enough to be one of the premier NFL organizations for the next decade. I guess projecting a decade out is always pretty tough, but for the sake of it, I do think that this is a healthy organization to the point where they're never going to suck, right? This is going to be a well-run, above 500 team for a long time. I compare it to the way that San Francisco has sustained success. They've had some down years, including last season, but even through two different sets of quarterbacks and really two different phases of players, they've had two different Super Bowl runs. At least they've gotten to the big game and lost at the hands of Mahomes twice. That's kind of the avenue I think the Lions are going to go down. And you look at with how much money everyone is due over the next 12 months, Anzalone, Hutchinson, LaPorta, Brian Branch, Jamo, you're going to have to start picking and choosing. Not to mention you've already paid and made top 5 players across their position, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Penei Sewell. Not that I regret any of those decisions. Derek Barnes also getting paid. You've already dished out so much money. You've got a ton of money to still hand out. And with Anzalone potentially, not saying it's happening, not saying it's not happening, but potentially holding out for the first time and kind of going toe-to-toe with Brad Holmes, I'm wondering if this is the last year of the first window for the Lions. Again, I don't think, hey, Super Bowl or bust, they're never going to get another chance. But this is going to be the best chance the Lions get here for a few years. Because then you have to start picking and choosing. This is the last year with this group before you really start to lose out on some players. I think Alex Anzalone is the first guy to get the short end of the straw, or get the short straw, short end of the stick. But if Alex Anzalone kind of sees this coming, and it's like, to hell with this, you're giving me a new contract or I'm not playing with the Lions, then the Lions are suddenly in a very tricky situation. Because what happened last year when Alex Anzalone was out from week 12 to week 17? Granted, a ton of other injuries, but Anzalone, the straw that broke the camel's back. They were 31st in DVOA defense. They were 28th in EPA per play. This team fell apart without Anzalone, who I don't think is the superstar of this defense by any stretch of the imagination, but is in fact the glue piece that holds everyone together at that will linebacker spot. He might sniff this out, him and his agent, and go to Brad Holmes and say, no, man, we saw Derek Barnes get an extension. We saw Taylor Decker get an extension. We saw Aleem McNeil get an extension. I've earned it just as much, if not more, than some of those guys. And you know what? I wouldn't blame them for doing that because they're right about it. But you look around the situation, you look around who else is due for a paycheck within the next 12 months, I don't see a feasible way to pay Alex Anzalone. Now, they can get really creative the same way they did with the Kirby Joseph contract, where they're voiding this money 3 years after the contract actually ends. They get paid way more money than I do in general, and they're way more geniuses when it comes to managing that salary cap than I am. So there is some tricky stuff that they can figure out, loopholes within this salary cap. But at the end of the day, I just don't believe it's fundamentally possible to pay Anzalone, Aiden Hutchinson, Jamison Williams, Brian Branch, Sam LaPorta, in addition to already playing St. Brown, Sewell, Goff, Taylor Decker, McNeil, Kirby Joseph, Derek Barnes. It's just a lot of money. Training camp has begun. The rookies reported there yesterday. All the veterans will be there by Saturday at the latest. Most of them are already there, I believe. Is this the final season with this core for the Lions? I don't think it's Super Bowl or bust. I'm making that very clear. Well-run organization, great GM, great coach, great culture. They will have sustained success. But is this the last year with this group? Is this the best chance the Lions will have to win a Super Bowl for the next couple of seasons? I think the answer is yes. And honestly, you can make the argument 2023 was their best chance to win the Super Bowl. When you were right there. You saw the Super Bowl. You were looking right at it. A trip to it on the line. Fall apart in the second half versus San Fran. Last year, you go 15-2. You looked like the world beaters for the first 5 weeks of the season. Injuries destroy the season. This is the last year with this group. Because there's a difference between adding talent in the draft every year like Brad Holmes has done for the last 4 seasons and replacing talent. Because what's going to become more difficult with later draft picks, into the first round, is replacing the talent that you've already brought in. I have no doubt that Brad Holmes can draft well. But replacing the guys that he's already drafted and developed, that's where it becomes a little bit tricky. And these are all good problems to have. It's signs of a good, healthy organization. Signs of a team that drafted really well and developed really well. But these are going to become problems nonetheless. 2025. I think it's the last year the Lions have with this group of players before they start losing out on guys. Do you think it's the last? Do you think it's the best opportunity the Lions will have to win a Super Bowl? 9